up with a perfect plan, and you know, I would ride off into the sunset, and my two managers and all the staff and the drivers and everybody could run it, you know, like a little cooperative, and I could, off I go. That was the plan anyway. And the business that we were going to do was with my friend. We were going to do this anti-aging health and beauty thing. I was really looking forward to it. So in February of that year, I went off to Puerto Rico, where well, first of all, I stopped off in New York. It was a bit cold, and I went for a few days, saw Phantom of the Opera. It was wonderful. Went on to Puerto Rico, where I was going to meet my boyfriend, and I was going to decide whether or not we were going to continue, because after 8 or 9 years, I thought I needed some kind of commitment. But anyway, I took a friend with me, and I don't think, is Sue here tonight? No. I took a friend with me, and so we'd come from the cold of New York, and there we were in the San Juan Hilton Hotel. In those days, money was no object. It was, you know, lovely. I had a great lifestyle, worked hard, always worked hard, 7 days a week in whatever business that I've been involved in. Anyway, I ended up through a phone call talking to this guy in San Francisco, and the first thing I said to him was, "Do you believe in magic?" And he said, "Yes, of course." And we started talking about things like positive things and what have you. And he told me, I mentioned Anthony Robbins, and I said, "Oh, have you read the book?" And he went, "More than that," he said, "I've done the fire walk in Hawaii." I thought, wow, this is my kind of guy. So he said, why don't you come on by on the way home to England? I said, well, it's a bit way out, San Francisco, but I'll think about it. Anyway, after the month was up, I decided that, I might just change my ticket and go to San Francisco. Well, I fell in love with San Francisco, and I went back again, and I put a deposit on a beautiful apartment, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be good. This is where I'll write my book. So I put the deposit on, came back, and here we are now on the night of May the 12th in this cafe place in Westbourne, and I get a phone call. We just ordered our food, I think. Anyway, the phone rang, and this voice said, "Is that Vanessa Coleman?" "Yes," I said. And he said, "This is Detective Inspector," I think it was, "Monaghan." I went, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Yeah, we've just arrested," and he reeled off all these names, and I thought, my goodness. Anyway, he said, "We've arrested them, blah, 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 and we'd like you to come down to the station. And if anybody knows me, they know that I'm a bit cheeky." So I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm a bit busy right now. I'll call you back later." But anyway, he wasn't very impressed with that. But obviously I was in a state of shock, because this wasn't part of the game plan. And he kept ringing at intervals and that. But the final thing that did it was that they put Elizabeth on the phone, because it never entered my head that they were at my house. I didn't think about that. And anyway, Elizabeth just said, "Please come home, Mum." And because it was unusual for me to go out at night. So anyway, I went home, but I never made it to the front door, because as I got out the taxi, because by now obviously I'd had quite a few drinks, knowing that, you know, it wasn't going to be good. And anyway, next thing is, I was handcuffed in the back and thrown in the back of a car, and duly taken to the police station, where they took lots of terrible photographs. And I don't know if anybody's ever been in a police cell or anything, but that was a strange experience. Because as I'm walking along to the cells, it must be now Friday the 13th, there's all these shoes outside the doors, and it's not like the Hilton, the shoes at the Hilton. And I didn't realise that these were my staff. And in fact, my handyman had been arrested, and they thought that he was the manager. But I found it a bit strange when I found out later, because he was wearing a red overall and, you know, like a handyman. But maybe they thought he was an undercover manager. But so anyway, I was put in this cell, and of course I started banging on the cell doors. And I suppose if you looked down at me, you probably thought I was doing a Mexican wave as I was going up and down the cell door, screaming, "Why me? Why me?" And then I alternated with that with water, because by now I was dehydrated, and I've got a fear about not having water. So they brought me lots of water, so I lined all the water up. So the next day I was interviewed, and I was subsequently charged with running the brothel. Although, as I said to them, but I've always helped you. Why are you now coming for me now? And of course, I didn't really get an answer to that. And over the next 13 months, I think I appeared in court about 6, 7, 8 times, until I eventually was sentenced at the Crown Court. Having said sentenced, I went for the probation things and everything, and it was recommended that I would have just a suspended sentence, because I had never done anything wrong before. I was the only carer for my daughter, and but anyway, I had this wonderful tarot reader, and I went to see her, and I'd known her for a long time, and she'd always said it the way it was. And I said to her, do you think I'm going to prison? And she said, well, you're either going to prison or hospital. And I thought, well, I think I'd rather go to prison, because at that time lots of people weren't coming out alive out of hospital. So I told my barrister, and he said, I can't see you going to prison. And I said, yes. I said, I had dinner with him the night before I'm due in court, and I said, yes, I'm going to be going to prison. Anyway, the night, I'd had to make arrangements for my daughter to be looked after by social services, just in case. And on the morning of 2nd of June, it's now 2006, I had to say to Elizabeth, I packed my bag, and I had to say to her, I don't know when I'm going to see you again, because I knew that the sentence that I was looking at was 7 years. It could have been 7 years, but I didn't know. But anyway, so I went off not knowing when I was going to see her again. And funny thing is, I'd had lots of dreams about dying, and about, I'd always wondered about my funeral, who would come to my funeral, and would my ex-boyfriend be there with my present boyfriend? And do you know what? Going into court, it was very much like as if I was at my own funeral, because I don't know if you've been into court where you go in, and where you stand, there's a big high, like, wall thing. So your family and friends can't see you. So I felt as if, this was it. Anyway, I must tell you, the day before, I was told by a friend, whatever happens, the judge you don't need is Judge Beashall. If you get Beashall, that's it. So the day before my court, I'd gone to look at who I was going to get. Anyway, it wasn't Judge Beashall, so I felt good. However, on the day of the court, guess what? It was Judge Beashall. So for some reason he'd changed to my court, and when he came in, because actually I thought, I wonder if this is going to be the judge that used to come to my premises every few weeks, you know. So, but anyway, it wasn't, because the guy the judge that normally came every few weeks, who was very tall, I shan't mention any names, but this guy was very, very small. Something I've just actually remembered. After my arrest, the two policemen, and I can't say one was good and one was bad because they both seemed pretty bad to me, but they said funny things like, do you realise, Vanessa, that people can't sell houses because of your place? I said, why is that? He said, well, people say, oh, we can't sell our house, there's a brothel there. I said, well, I find that a bit difficult to believe, because if you'd seen my place, it looked more like I was living in an industrial estate, and there's always furniture all over the road. And then another thing they said was, oh, and we get people ringing up and they go, oh, there's a queue outside. People ringing up saying there's a queue. And so I had this vision in my head as he was saying it of, you know, all these people standing in this queue. You know, you get the bus stop and the cords and everything, which of course wasn't true. If they wanted to come in, they would have come in. They wouldn't be standing in a queue. And then another funny thing they said was, oh, and, you know, we often see old men going up the stairs and coming back 5 minutes later with a smile on their face. I said, well, you know, I've got this thing about helping the aged, but I said, I can assure you, with Viagra, it's much more than 5 minutes. So everybody afterwards said to me, did you notice the turning point? The turning point was when he heard how much money the business had made. Didn't seem too bad at there, but when he heard like 600 and something thousand pounds, it was like the eyes came out. And anyway, he was going on and on and on. And I thought, as he was talking, I was waiting for those words that he was going to say. I heard him say 6 months, 2 months, this, that, and the other, and I thought he was going to say suspended, and I was waiting, but of course it didn't come, and then, I don't know, everything seemed to be happening. There was a guard next to me, and I said, am I going to prison? And he went, yes, I'm afraid so. And so I went down the steps, and this was why my dreams, it was like my dream coming back again, because I thought, this is like I've just died, you know, I'm now going down to be cremated, and my family are going to go away, and I've lost them. It was just like the dream reenacted. Anyway, when I was down in the cells, my barrister came to me and he said, don't worry, I'm putting straight away for an appeal. And I said, oh, don't worry with that. I said, I've been told that I'll be out on a tag in a few months, don't worry. The probation officer, don't worry, Vanessa, you'll be out on a tag before you know it. So anyway, the van came, I was handcuffed and put in this van. It was a hot day, and I think it was about 4.5 hours. I knew it was going to be a long journey, 4.5 hours journey. Now, I don't suppose many of you have been in one of these little places that they lock you in, you know, these Reliance vans, and you sit in it, there's not much room, but there's like a little cabin thing, and I pretended to get through it because I was beginning to get a panic attack, that I was on an aeroplane, that I was going somewhere, because I had to take my mind off to somewhere else, otherwise, you know, I felt my heart racing. Anyway, prison was not a particularly decent place to be in. But what I found was really difficult, that when I went to apply to get my tag, they said to me, no, you're not eligible for a tag. I said, but I was told that, you know, I was told by them that I was going to get a tag. No, you're not. So I I insisted on, because you can't just pick up the phone, you know, you think, you're so used to in your life, mobile phone or whatever, you can't just do that. So it took ages to get hold of my solicitor. And then I asked to see the governor, and he said, I think it came under the